The Smash Bros. Series is very good with fan service and referencing past games of its cast, but sometimes there's components missing from a character's kit that feel like drastic oversights, or other times there's components present that don't accurately represent the character in question. I thought it'd be fun to give each character one change to better represent their series of origin. Now that's easier said than done, because some characters are already represented near perfectly, meanwhile other characters feel like they need a full redesign rather than one measly change. So bear with me on some of these. But first, some disclaimers. 1. These changes are generally not made with game balance in mind. The goal here is to affect the representation of characters to their home series, using only inherent balance changes if I feel there's something mechanically egregious that doesn't sit right with me, or if I can't find anything else. 2. A lot of characters have very easy alternate costumes you can give them from their games. I tried to reduce the amount of times I used this as my change, but in certain cases it was just too difficult not to. And 3. Some of these characters are from games I haven't played. While I bit the bullet and tried to research them enough to find some changes, I won't have any gameplay to show alongside them. I'd like to play these games at some point, so I'd prefer not to spoil myself more than I have to. But these videos are also intended to be digestible audio only while running errands or doing chores, so the quality of the video itself shouldn't be affected. This list will be ordered chronologically in terms of appearance within the playable roster, but also categorized by series so I can talk about certain characters together. Characters that are the standalone representative of their series will be discussed together near the end of the video, followed by all the third-party characters. Now, with all the preamble out of the way, let's get into the list. And who better to start things off with than Mr. Nintendo himself, Mario. While Mario Wonder might have some new stuff that could be cool to add, I haven't actually played it yet or looked into it much. Instead, I want to look backwards to Mario Odyssey for an idea that holds a lot of potential. My first proposition of this video is to replace Mario's cape with Cappy. And to properly set the tone of this video, let's get crazy. If Mario hits an opponent with Cappy, he will get transported inside of them, temporarily taking control of them. Now for the sake of balance, because I still want these ideas to be balanced, this has to be monitored very carefully. I think it's reasonable that the player captured will be able to mash out of the control, similar to Kirby's Inhale or Donkey Kong's Color Throw. And even at high percents, Mario shouldn't gain control for more than a few seconds, just enough that you can move the other player out of the way or into another player's attacks. Additionally, attempting to taunt will release the other player from Mario's control, with an animation not dissimilar to that of a footstool, which will also happen automatically if you're ever airborne, even as early as during the capture. Another thing to note is that when the captured player is hit by an attack, Mario gets launched out of them with twice the knockback, retaining all of the damage. Lastly, as one final touch, if the captured player successfully mashes out, Mario will get knocked away as if he fell out of a Mario 64 portrait. So there's something crazy, let's dial it back a touch. For Luigi, there's a really obvious alternate costume that I can't pass over entirely in Mr. L, and while I'm a massive fan of this design, it almost feels too easy. Besides, I have something better in mind. As the Smash series has gone on, Luigi has been slowly tweaked to represent Luigi's Mansion, but I'm not satisfied with what they've actually done with it yet. Let's fix that, shall we? In the first Luigi's Mansion game, Luigi could suck up elements like fire and water, which he could then exhaust to solve puzzles. I think this is a neat idea, and I propose we replace his fireball with this property, the Poltergust. While you'd be able to suck up material objects with it similar to DDD's Inhale, the main draw of the move would be storing elemental attacks for later use, sort of like Villager and Isabelle's Pocket ability, but with more of a continuous effect like Bowser's Fire Breath. And speaking of Bowser's Fire Breath, I'm going to give this move a small tweak. Now if you're familiar with Project Plus, you might know that they changed this move outright to be more of a fireball, operating on a cooldown like Rob's Laser. And while I much prefer this version of the move, I don't want to get rid of the utility offered by the continuous hitbox it currently has. So I'm going to combine the two. If you hold the B button when using the special, you'll get the move as it normally functions, but quickly tap and release the button and you'll instead shoot out the P plus fireball. Whether this move needs a cooldown to be less spammable or is fine as is, I'll leave it to your imagination. I don't have any strong feelings either way. With the king out of the way, let's now turn our attention to the princesses, and with them you'll also begin to notice a trend, one for the better: diversifying echoes. The idea of Echo Fighters is one that's very appealing, creating an additional character with minimal changes to an existing character to pad out the roster without excessively increasing dev time. Unfortunately, most of the Echoes don't actually diversify themselves enough from the original. While Marth and Lucina or Roy and Chrom are both great examples of what the concept could be, I think Peach and Daisy are an example of what they shouldn't be. So let's change that. Peach is the first character that will get a purely mechanical change, and while it's not my intention to nerf her, that's unfortunately what's gonna happen. But I don't have anything against her, I'm just unhappy that she gets to be the sole character exempt from a universal mechanic, the short hop multiplier. If you don't know, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has a mechanic where aerials done out of a short hop do decreased damage, and regardless of whether you think this is good or bad for the game, I think we can all agree how messed up it is that Peach gets to bypass this mechanic by using her float. While floating, she's able to use aerials low to the ground without the damage multiplier. So a simple change to Peach is making this multiplier apply to float aerials as well. Now, is this all float aerials, or only aerials performed during startup, or right after leaving the ground? Honestly, I think any of those compromises are fair, but I don't think they'd actually change much in the grand scheme of things, so I'm open to whatever. And if you have any ideas for how to make this not butcher her damage, let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, hit the subscribe button. I stream regularly and I'm now uploading monthly videos. Any support is appreciated. Plug over. Did you notice that I was only talking about Peach with that last change, even though Daisy also has a float? Why is that? Well, my Daisy change is to actually turn Daisy's double jump into a normal double jump that doesn't have a float built into it. Ideally, I'd like to give her better stats to further differentiate her gameplay, but that's going beyond the one change angle. Also, during time of scripting, Delzathan put out a video on changing echoes, and wouldn't you know it, they stole my idea for Daisy. Yes, I know the idea is obvious and them choosing it just adds to that, shut up. Anyway, the way they pitched Daisy, at least until they started changing attack properties, is exactly what I'd want, so go check out their video here. And with the ability to redirect there for a full overhaul, I feel a lot more comfortable having the change here be just removing the float. Though, now I am curious, prior to Smash, has Daisy ever had the ability to float within games or promotional material? If you have the answer, then let me know in the comments. Hey, here's a fun idea. What if Dr. Mario's pills could put you to sleep? This idea is somewhat inspired by Phoenix Wright's questioning attacks in
Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
If you got hit by 3 to 5 of these, depending on his stance, within a roughly 5 to 10 second window, you would get put into a special stun state. I want to add this idea to Dr. Mario's pills. We'll just say they've been induced with anesthesia, and if you get by, say 5, within about 5 seconds of each other, you get put into a special sleep animation. This gives Dr. Mario a unique quality all to himself without making him terribly broken or unfair. It also makes his neutrals slightly better and helps it transition into his hard-hitting attacks. For Rosalina, I want to change her final smash, because her current one is... yeah. Now, I actually have a decent idea for how this could go. First, she creates a small launch star in front of her. Anyone within this space would get launched into the background. The game would then pause and transition into a cinematic where Hungry Luma starts getting fed star bits from off screen. After a second or so, he eagerly flies away, slamming into the player's launch and exploding into a new galaxy. The explosion would launch the players back into the game where they slam into the stage from above and proceed to bounce away, potentially flying back off screen in the process if the percent is high enough. I don't think I have anything else this creative on the list, definitely in terms of unique final smashes, but I'm happy with how this one came out. Bowser Jr. is interesting for me. He's a character I've wanted in this series for a good while prior to his eventual inclusion, and while I'm not terribly fond of how they chose to design him, given the paintbrush bleed is way cooler than call it, I do have a small idea to complement it. Not one that will increase his viability, but it's at least cute. Similar to how Robin and Hero can charge their neutral specials into various spells with different properties, I think it would be fun to give this to Bowser Jr. as well. So for this, he'll be able to charge the Cannonball into a Bullet Bill, and then the Bullet Bill into a Bonsai Bill. With each charge, the projectile will gain better damage, KO power, and the ability to mildly track nearby opponents, in exchange for slower movement speed. And that's it for the Mario series. Time to move on to the next... What do you mean I missed one? Listen, that thing is not a real character. I refuse to acknowledge... I don't care if I'm talking about echoes, they at least have a reason to exist. Fine. Okay, so let me just look into its background... Wait, what is this moveset? They added a Piranha Plant to the game as a playable character but didn't give it the ability to shoot fireballs? The Fire Piranha Plant was the first ever variation of the enemy, alongside the already represented Patui. And it's not even referenced in any of the alternate costumes? Alright, that's what we're doing. The Piranha Plant can now shoot fireballs. I don't really care what move this replaces or how it gets implemented, but that deserves to be somewhere somehow. There's no part of its kit that I feel needs to be replaced outright, so this could probably be a unique move like a down forward tilt or something, but feel free to mentally replace your least favorite move with this as well. It's no skin off my back. Editor's note, I guess I forgot back air is technically a Fire Piranha Plant reference, but I genuinely think they could have done more with the idea than they already did. A full-on projectile like in the Mario games feels like it should have been one of the first moves drafted. There, I made a change for the plant. I can move on to the next series now, right? Good. Well, from one obvious reference to another, it's time for the leader of the bunch. And speaking of moves that have been around since the inception of time, why can he not throw barrels? Like, come on, it's right there. For this idea, he would grab a barrel the size of himself and hurl it forward. It would do decent damage and stun, but more importantly, its slow-moving nature would give him a way to close gaps against keep away. I'd personally choose to replace his forward special with this, but I'm open to whatever. Now please, do me a solid, and never play this character against me if he gets this change. I don't think my sanity can take it. Diddy Kong is one of those characters that I can't really think of anything for. Maybe there's something glaring, but I haven't played any of the Donkey Kong games, so it's all beyond me. One small idea that got suggested is to make his dash attack go off ledges. In fact, I think Project Plus already does this. The character is plenty strong already, and it's not a buff he really needs, but it's not something any Diddy players will complain about either. I know I gave Piranha Plant a lot of flack a minute ago, but this change to K. Rool is actually inspired by it somewhat. You see, while I was researching K. Rool's abilities, I happened to find out that during boss fights, you can't attack by jumping on him until he throws the crown. Given Piranha Plant already has the unique property of not being footstoolable while it's crouching, I think you could do the same thing to K. Rool. And since it's possible to steal K. Rool's crown from him in this game, I think you can even make it extend beyond his crouching animation. My idea would be that if K. Rool is on the ground, potentially stationary, and with the crown specifically on his head, you get damaged if you try to footstool him. And when I say specifically on his head, I mean it. From the first frame he grabs the crown to the last frame he puts it back, his head is free game, and he can be footstooled. This also puts more nuance into the crown toss itself. While it's still one of your best neutral tools, the potential risk of throwing it is now a lot greater, as you lose your protection against any footstool-based techniques, such as footstool out of shield. And now, onto the Zelda series. And oh baby, is there some stuff to talk about here. You have 3 Links with near identical movesets, a Falcon clone that never got any of his own identity beyond a Final Smash, and the single, non-clone character I'd argue is the most in need of a redesign. It's just a shame I'm stuck with one change per character. I have a lot of things I'd love to go into here, but one step at a time. So let's address the Links first. While Big Link doesn't lean as far into the mechanics of his Switch outings as he could, it's also hard for me to conceptualize any changes that wouldn't feel out of place as the only change added. Like, maybe you could give him Magnesis as a grab or Cryonis as a new up special, but eh. And while I quite enjoy the idea of adding Fuse onto his arrows to incentivize resource management, how would you even go about implementing that? So let's just keep things simple and turn his down air into shield surfing. He gains a small increase in height as he transitions the shield from his arm to below his feet and proceeds to fall. While this wouldn't be too dissimilar from his current down air, it would have one additional fun property. If you land on any kind of explosive, including things like your remote bombs or even Snake's C4, you will immediately detonate the explosion and launch back into the air, dealing increased damage to those around you and taking no damage yourself. And for Toon Link, we're giving him the Wind Waker as a new neutral special. In the BlazBlue series, Rachel Alucard has a similar ability, so I'm just gonna model this after her. While holding neutral special, you can summon a burst of wind by moving the analog in any cardinal or intercardinal direction. In addition to messing with your opponent's positioning, you'd also be able to affect the trajectory of projectiles you or anyone else have thrown, adding layers upon layers to Toon Link's already strong zoning capabilities. And finally, Young Link. I don't actually have anything super creative here. I'm sure you could do something really cool with the masks, but I haven't played Majora's Mask yet. I know, I'm the worst. So mostly, I'm just going to use this chance to add more love to an underutilized mechanic within Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So, you know Inkling, right? You know how they have a unique mechanic to recharge ink by holding shield plus B? Yeah, let's give this to Young Link as well. Actually, we're going to add this to a few characters, but Young Link is the first recipient on this list. And this isn't intended to be an Inkling specific thing in the first place. Steve can also do this to summon a new crafting table at will. He needs it, trust me. Anyway, Young Link has special fire arrows, and that's cute and all, but let's make shield plus B switch his arrows between fire and ice. Fire arrows could retain fire properties and do a touch more knockback than ice arrows, with ice arrows instead having ice properties and the chance to freeze people similar to the Ice Climbers. And now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I'm not a fan of how Zelda is designed in this game. Back in Melee, the idea of giving her the Fairy Fountain spells was a clever choice, but Ocarina of Time was released over 25 years ago at this point, and they haven't appeared in another Zelda game since. If you asked me prior to Ultimate's release, I would have proposed giving her spells upgrades into the Champion's abilities from Breath of the Wild, but that idea doesn't even feel enticing anymore since that's not even the newest game anymore. And honestly, Tears of the Kingdom doesn't offer much for her either, unless you want to get crazy with one of the spoilers. It's just a shame that the only signature ability she's ever had is her final smash. Okay, that bit got old. Anyway, since the light arrow isn't her final smash anymore, throwing that onto her moveset instead feels like a slam dunk. Unfortunately, this might wind up as a nerf, since I don't feel comfortable replacing any special other than the Phantom, and that's arguably her most important move. But I don't know, it just never sat right with me for some reason, and that's coming from someone that loves Spirit Tracks. So anyway, give her Light Arrow and base it off of whatever your favorite projectile is. I'd probably vote to make it a charge up like Link or Byleth, but you could just as easily base it off of Samus, the Pits, or anyone else. And who better to follow up Zelda than definitely not Zelda? And oh boy, do I have ideas for Sheik. Okay, I lied. I got nothing here. Sheik only has one appearance within canon games, being Ocarina of Time, and all she does in that game is teach Link how to fast travel to the start of each dungeon. So yeah, there's not a lot to go off of. But with that said, I think giving him the harp as a taunt could still be fun, and as an added bonus, she could have a 1 in 6 chance to play each of the fast travel songs each time. Maybe even give him a super rare chance to play Zelda's Lullaby, cause why not? They're definitely not the same character. And last but not least, we have Ganondorf. I want to give a special shout out to Project Plus real quick for giving him the float and a new up tilt. I really wanted to make my change here the up tilt, I love it that much, but I got hard outvoted. If the theme of this video was aimed at changes in the name of fan service, then I gotta stick to my guns and go with that. So we're giving him the iconic attack that needs no introduction, the Dead Man's Volley. Ganon will create a small ball of energy and throw it forward, with it lightly homing towards anyone nearby. The gimmick of this attack being that you can hit it back at him and turn it into a game of tennis, and each time you hit it, it goes faster. That's right, this attack is just a miniature version of Lethal League! But jokes aside, this is a pretty fair comparison of how it would work, and again, it's iconic. Need I say more? For Samus, my change is a combination of two ideas. Firstly, Delzathan's idea of turning down special into a Morph Ball, with faster initial movement, a shorter hop, and the classic bombs that you can drop by pressing B. However, while their idea stopped there, I'm also going to add in the crawl attack Project M gave Samus. Press the A button while on the ground, and do a small attack with a quick burst of movement. Quick editor's note, so I never really stopped to consider this until I was recording for the video, but Project M still lets you drop bombs while rolling around. I guess it's easier just to say that my change is to give her the PM crawl as a down B stance with a bit more movement options. I just wanted to point that out real quick, back to the video. In contrast to this, we have Dark Samus. While I do really like Delzathan's ideas of giving her passive corruption to foes with certain attacks, or using Dark Samus as the Legacy Samus while giving base Samus a full redesign, I feel like there's changes I'd rather make here within the scope of this video. My idea instead is to once again change the down special, but this time into the Phazon energy shield she uses in her first boss fight in Metroid Prime 2. While this attack would be capable of dealing light damage to foes within the barrier, it would be intended as more of a defensive tool used to destroy projectiles and force zoners to play more aggressively. But while the last few characters have had plenty of material to pull changes from, we can't say the same for Zero Suit Samus. As far as I can tell, there's no trademark abilities to this form beyond increased agility. So with that in mind, the only option I have available is to anger the fandom and address the Forbidden Game. We're giving her an alternate costume based on young Samus from Metroid Other M. But jokes aside, this outfit is already a spirit within Smash Ultimate. Hell, Project Plus added it as a secret alt for her, and that's where I first saw it. I love this design to pieces, so picking this as my change is an easy choice given the lack of competition. And finally, Ridley. We're changing his down air to the pogo attack he has in the Super Metroid boss fight. He'd fall with his tail as the attack instead of his feet, while also gaining the ability to bounce off the ground or other players. However, while bouncing off of other players would have no drawback, it would have increased end lag after bouncing off the ground to restrict it for how spammable it would be otherwise. Next up is the Kirby series. While my dream change for Kirby would be for his copy abilities to have more practical moves taken from the counterpart, I think that alone can be a topic for another video. So instead, I want to give him a new special from his home series to help address his shortcomings within the competitive meta, and this will replace his stone ability since that move doesn't contribute to much outside of casual play, especially when used on the ground. While there's a part of me that wanted to give him Wheel as a burst option to close gaps against swordies and zoners, the only way I can think to design the move is by making him get another spin dash. Well, I guess it could function as a new dash attack as well, but I have a much more fun idea. So instead of giving him a burst option, we're going to give him a powerful zoning tool and the Plasma ability. If you haven't played a Kirby game, or at least one with this ability since it swaps off with the far less interesting Spark ability every now and then, it's got a very unique mechanic attached to it. The ability has a passive charge that builds up as you rotate along the D-pad or analog, and the attack you would fire changes based on the amount of charge you built up, resetting it back to 0 in the process. Now, to address the obvious first, how are you supposed to rotate your analog without dashing off stage or accidentally tap jumping? So fun fact, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate actually added a unique mechanic where you can hold 2 shield buttons at once and lose the ability to roll, spot dodge, or perform other out of shield options. All you have to do is hold 2 shield buttons and rotate a bit when you have some breathing room, which is pretty similar to how Plasma plays in the Kirby games, funny enough. Additionally, characters that don't have unique shield plus B mechanics can also accomplish this effect by holding B instead of the second shield button, which is super intuitive in this instance. Anyway, I've talked about Kirby enough, so let's speedrun the 4 moves Plasma has. With no charge, down special becomes Plasma Needle. This is basically just a really weak jab with slightly more range. While each individual needle won't do a lot on its own, the ability to rapid fire a few at a time can net you some damage against opponents spacing right outside your normal jab. With a little bit of charge, this instead becomes the Plasma Arrow, and would function as a respectful projectile, though not one particularly strong either. Think Dark Pit arrows. With medium charge, the projectile becomes the Plasma Laser, gaining the ability to pass through opponents, along with increased power and range. We're looking at something a bit closer to Robin's Thoron or Hero's Zapple now. And at max charge, it becomes Plasma Wave. While it would functionally become another variant of Samus's Charge Shot, it would retain Laser's ability to pass through opponents. To balance the power of the attack, I would make the total charge time to be higher than even that of Giga Flare. Additionally, the charge has a decay over time, so it's not as simple as reaching max charge, you have to also maintain it. With great power comes great upkeep. While we're at it, let's speed through the rest of the Kirby series as well. Don't worry, they're not nearly as complex. Firstly, Meta Knight's Final Smash is reverted to Brawl's Galaxia Darkness. I understand the desire to move Final Smashes to be more cinematic, but Galaxia Darkness is already one of the coolest Final Smashes the series has had, and I think it's sad that it faded away. Speaking of reverting changes from Brawl, I want DDD to throw Waddle Dees again. I get that Gordo is one of his best moves nowadays, but man... I enjoyed it way more when he threw Waddle Dees and Waddle Doos, with the occasional Gordo that doubled as a surprise kill move. This change is definitely more for me than for the game itself, but I don't know, dude, I just think they're fun. It's my belief that they were changed in Smash 4 for 3DS limitations, but then they didn't come back when that was no longer an issue and it made me sad. Also, bonus points if you can Waddle Dash now that directional air dodges are a thing. Next up on the list, Star Fox, and we're gonna open with a classic.
Landmaster!
Look, Fox is perfectly fine as is. I can't think of anything off the dome so egregious it needs to be changed, but I also can't think of anything lacking to the point of needing love. I toyed with giving him Melee Shine again, but I don't actually think that would have any change at all without Melee Wave Dashing alongside it. But the Landmaster was fun, so who cares? The change to Cinematic Supers was cool, but when all 3 Star Fox characters get the same Final Smash, it's hard to say if it was worth it. So we're reverting this change and now 2 of them share a Final Smash. Actually, why stop there? We're gonna change Falco's too. Not to the Landmaster though, I've got something better in mind.
Personally, I prefer the air.
Falco jumps off the top of the screen like normal, but this time he flies in from either side in an R-Wing. While in this state, you basically get to just play a temporary shoot 'em up. You can fly around for 5 seconds and shoot lasers at everyone in an attempt to sow chaos and steal some stocks. Which just leaves Wolf. And don't worry, his Final Smash can stay. He actually does have something that stands out to me. Why is it that as they progressively tried to declone characters and remove sex kicks from the game, they chose to replace his classic nail with one? I guess it's to separate it from all the other multi-hit nails that we have now, but... why? So let's swap that back and call it a day. Strap in everyone, because we got a big block coming up. Firstly, the mascot of one of the biggest IPs to exist. We have Pikachu. Look, I'm an Axe fan, so this one hurts me. It really does. The theming of Pikachu's outfits revolve around him wearing headgear of past playable characters. The white and red hat of Red, the green bandana of Brendan, the hat of Ethan, the hat with glasses being Calum, and then the knit hat of Celine. The 3 outfits that break this trend are the default outfit, Pikachu Libre, and the party hat. And while the former 2 both have a reason to exist, the party hat is kinda just a stand-in from the 64 days. And it's popular, and I love it, but what else am I supposed to do? Rename Thunder Jolt to like Thundershock for consistency with the games? Revert his Final Smash to Brawls to separate the 2 rats ever so slightly more? Let's not make this any more painful than we have to. Please? Anyway, give this Pikachu Don's hat instead. She's the icon of my childhood, and Diamond and Pearl aren't even represented here. Pichu's gonna get a super small change, befitting that of a joke character. I think it's cute that his melee crouching animation has him sleeping, so we're bringing that back. However, we're giving it an extra property. Pichu now heals 1% for every uninterrupted second of crouching. The amount healed is negligible enough that it's not going to take over the meta, and this will serve to complement the volatile nature of the character a wee bit, since self-damage and lightweight now have the slightest bit of counterbalance to them. And who better than to follow up two characters with nothing notable that stands out, but a character in need of a full redesign. Jigglypuff's specials, barring Rest, have been super useless since the first game to include them, at least on a competitive level. You could honestly change any of them here, but I'm going to replace Rollout. I looked through the entire move list from the Pokemon games, and I think I found one I'm happy with adding to her arsenal. Sweet Kiss is a move Igglybuff learns by leveling up, prior to even evolving into Jigglypuff, thus making it a solid pick for a new special. She will fire a small projectile that travels slowly, similar to Hero's Wax Spell, and will confuse targets on hit. Now, giving debuffs out isn't something I want to get too crazy with, but this one won't be too much. Basically, your next 1 to 4 attacks determined randomly that can deal damage, meaning no Sing or Flood, will recoil 100% of the damage onto yourself, even if you whiff. Do you want to bite the bullet and keep swatting away with your strongest attacks, or do you want to play more passively to throw out some of your weaker attacks until the debuff is over? Either instance will have its own benefits for the Jigglypuff player. Originally, I was just going to give Mewtwo the Shadow Mewtwo ult from Pokken Tournament and call it a day, but I remembered something interesting. So in the Japanese version of the game, Mewtwo speaks. But in the English version, he's silent aside from grunts. Even back in Melee when Marth and Roy spoke Japanese regardless of language, so giving him dialogue across various languages would be fun. We also had the joke idea of having his dialogue be in a random language separate from your selected one to play into his psychic nature, but it's hard to pitch this as an actual change. Just more talking in general is good enough for me. Lucario will get a small change from his Project M counterpart. If you sit down and think about it, Lucario is designed horribly for a competitive game. In order to reach your strongest state, you have to get hit a bunch? Whose idea was this? While I'm not going to go the full PM route of redesigning how Aura works, there is one small thing I want to steal. There, Lucario can hold Up Taunt, dealing constant damage to himself but passively charging Aura. I think a mechanic that allows the player to have some control over their Aura is good for the character, and increasing the damage is a fair drawback, so this isn't broken either. For Pokemon Trainer, I'll just give a small change to each Pokemon. Squirtle is fine as is, so let's toss the Squirtle Squad reference somewhere. He now has a 5% chance to put on the Shades when doing taunts. Ivysaur is going to get Seed Bomb instead of Bullet Seed, functioning exactly as it does in Project M. And wouldn't you know it, Charizard is also getting a PM change. They have good ideas. What do you want from me? Anyway, Charizard has PM Jab now, a quick swipe that pops the enemy upwards, not too dissimilar to Roy's Jab. I guess that means he can jail it too, huh? Greninja will lose the ability to move himself with Grounded Hydro Pump, so basically this move just functions the same as Flood now. Don't worry, the aerial usage remains unchanged. I didn't have any strong ideas and none of his moves need changing, so here's something to make his keep away a touch more annoying. Changing Incineroar is scaly, because he could use the help, but Lord help us all if he gets it. Here's a cute one. You know all the built-in taunts he has after landing certain attacks? If you get taunted after being attacked, you receive the Growl debuff, dropping your damage by 10% for the next 5 seconds. Nothing too crazy, but also doubles as a nod to how terrifying he is to fight. Okay, I actually have something I'm super proud of for the Earthbound boys. You might have heard before that PK Starstorm is a move neither character actually learns in their games. But did you know this also applies to their specials, with the exception of PK Flash? I wanted to change the neutral specials regardless to make them a bit more practical, but this gave me a super good idea instead. I'm changing both of their neutral specials to each other's signature move. This means Ness is getting PK Love, and Lucas is getting PK Rocket. With that said, I'm not really sure how to translate Earthbound attacks into Smash Bros. Effectively, so we're just gonna make both of them charge shots. The catch? You can only use them once they reach full charge. No partial charge variants here. Next, we're getting into the most controversial series under the Smash umbrella, and I'll see what I can do to fix some of the hate. Firstly, Marth. And honestly, he's fine. I just want his Sour Spots to have a bit more of an identity to them. Sure, the Tipplers are his main thing, but so long as there's never a reason to use the Sour Spots, you might as well just play Lucina instead. But what if he had different combo routes or kill confirms off of Sour Spots, like he used to? Now they'd both have more of an identity as the deeper one with more options, and the simpler one with higher consistency. And while I'm here, Lucina. Her having the mask from when she disguised herself as Marth in one of the taunts is a cute reference, but why stop there? Give her an outfit or two where she dons the mask and fights with it on. For Roy, I'm changing his counter to Blazing Lion, his engaged skill from Fire Emblem Engage. Following the same animation as the counter, the sword strike is far weaker but leaves flames on the floor, doing passive damage in the area for the next few seconds. This idea is actually pretty similar to Xenoblade's down special in Rivals of Aether. In contrast, I want to give Chrom the Marcina up smash. Him having an up special similar to Ike's proves that the Echo's moveset doesn't have to derive from their counterpart exclusively, and it always felt weird to me that he has a multi-hit up smash despite not having any elements attributed to him. However, I'm equally happy giving him Ike's or someone else's up smash instead, if that's more your fancy. And speaking of Ike, we're giving him a comeback mechanic. I tried to find something interesting here, but the only thing I could find would introduce a silence mechanic into his toolkit, and that got shot down by everyone I ran it by. So we're giving him his signature skill within the Fire Emblem series, Resolve. This skill changes from game to game, so I'm going to mix and match a little bit. Like in Engage, it will be a passive effect that activates automatically when you accrue a certain amount of damage. In this case, we'll go with the usual 100% in a normal battle and 50 HP in a stamina battle. Though instead of taking the effects from Engage, I want to base it more on Ike's actual games, increasing strength and speed. The multiplier here would be 1.5 times if I want to keep it true to home series, but then you get some funky numbers. Instead, I'm going to make it 1.1 times, enough to notice it and become faster than a bunch of characters, but not so much that you time people out with it. We don't need another Pocket Cloud situation. And the modifier on your damage would naturally make your attacks hit harder and KO sooner. Next is Robin, and he could not be any more perfect. There is nothing you can change about him to make him more representative of where he's from. Well, there wasn't in Smash 4 anyway, so what changed? Nothing. Yeah, nothing changed. Well, not to Robin anyway. Robin was perfect as is, with Chrom as his final Smash. But now that Chrom's playable, you'd think he'd have gotten a new one. The fact that he didn't makes me feel Chrom's promotion was a decision made late in development. But either way, I want to change that. Now the easy way to do this is to just swap Chrom with Morgan, Robin's daughter or son in Awakening depending on the selected gender of Robin. And while that's my preferred adjustment, you could do something with Grima instead if you want to get a little spicier. The game's old enough that I shouldn't be worried about going into spoilers here, but also if you know, you know. Corrin is actually the character that sparked my idea of pulling from Engage for inspiration. Corrin's main ability is Dragon Vein, where you can put a temporary terrain effect down for one turn depending on your unit's type. Water to decrease a void, fog to increase a void, ice walls to block movement, etc. I think changing Corrin's down special to this would be a welcome change, while also finally giving them some unique identity. And you have two options you could easily take either of. A random effect you can play off of similar to Peach and Daisy's Turnips, or a user-selected hazard like Hero's Menu or Shulk's Monado. Both work great. And finally, Byleth. Originally, I was going to try to throw some small new property on Up Special, but I just had a flash of brilliance. While Byleth's final smash, Ruptured Heaven, works super well being the primary skill of the Sword of the Creator, it also felt like a meme due to the JPEG presentation. But since Byleth in Smash is built around having the other heroes' relics, what if we would have doubled down on that and changed the final smash to Byleth's Engage attack, Houses Unite? Except there's a problem. You see, that's not Byleth's Engage attack. It's actually tied to Edelgard from the DLC. But instead of stopping there, let's double down even more and turn Ruptured Heaven into the attack Byleth does in the match, and having it link into the cutscene of Houses Unite upon successfully hitting someone. With Fire Emblem now out of the way, we're through all the mass groupings of characters. Everything from here on out will be much shorter. Firstly, Kid Icarus. I want to change Pit's final smash back to the Smash 4 version, the 3 Sacred Treasures. I guess you could make the argument that these are outdated and don't work as the final smash, but why go with Lightning Chariot in that case? At least go all the way with the Great Sacred Treasure or something. So funny story, one of the changes that sparked this video was changing Dark Pit's neutral special to be something with his staff instead of the silver bow. But as it turns out, the bow is actually his signature weapon and the only one that appears in more than one fight. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go for more of a cosmetic change, swapping Electroshock with the Ogre Club. While it would feature increased range and higher startup, it would mostly just be a reskin of a weapon he actually uses in one of his fights, rather than one chosen arbitrarily. Fun fact, Palutena was one of the only characters with fully unique custom specials back during Smash 4, and when it came time to move to the new game, they decided to combine the token counter and reflector spells into a single move. But why have a counter or a reflector when you can have something unique instead? So we're going to change this to one of the other specials that didn't make the jump, specifically Heavenly Light. The way it works is Palutena creates a small pillar around herself, which slowly damages and pushes away other players for the few seconds it's active. Also, this move doesn't have any hitstun or knockback, so it's purely a damage over time effect. Villager and Isabelle are both one of the instances where they need the same thing. I tried to entertain different ideas, but ultimately, I just want them to get a new aerial. Forward air and back air both being slingshot is fine, but they need to have different use cases within a game that has reverse aerial rushdown. Since they don't, I just want to petition a sword-esque swipe on either of them, featuring other Animal Crossing tools. This could be a spacing back air with a fishing rod, similar to Cloud, or it could be a more aggressive forward air using a hammer, similar to Cloud. Either works. Hell, give Villager one and Isabelle the other if you really want. Next, we have the characters that people want to pretend don't exist. The Miis. Mii Brawler was a bit harder for me, so I'll just opt to give him the Mario Tornado as an alternate down special, in place of Head-On Assault. But I do have specific ideas for the other two. For Sword Fighter, a change I've wanted since he was announced. The Shuriken of Light can now be charged similarly to Greninja's Hydro Shuriken. And for Gunner, Grenade Launcher once again functions like it does in Smash 4, with grenades being chargeable for increased damage and range. This move got a lot of buffs going into Ultimate, and it lost the charge properties to balance it out. But honestly, I'd much rather have the charging than any of the buffs that were traded for it. And lastly, before getting into the individual characters, we have Xenoblade Chronicles, and starting off with its first protagonist, Shulk. Now originally, I just wanted to add B-reversing Nautilarts back into the game and call it a day, but honestly, this video is about fan service, and there's something much more egregious here that we need to talk about. Why did they decide to ruin his final smash going into Ultimate? For the uninitiated, Shulk's final smash is derived from a mechanic called Chain Attack. However, Xenoblade functions in 3-man parties, so by adding a 4th character into the mix, it fundamentally doesn't work anymore. The kicker is that the game that does have 4 character parties doesn't have this mechanic. I don't even have any issues with the character they chose to add into it. I just want it to go back to being 3 characters only. Ideally, it can swap between different permutations of the party like Joker's all-out attack does, but I'm content so long as it drops back down to 2 party members featured at a time. Following this, we have Pyra and Mythra, and despite Xenoblade 2 being one of my favorite games of all time, I struggled here. I can't really think of anything I'd change to them as a singular change, without giving them alternate outfits to the giant spoiler bomb as a final smash. I'm willing to have Mythra's change be removing Foresight, since it's not the type of thing that translates into Smash all that well, in exchange for giving a notable buff to Pyra, but there's not anything of interest that can seal this transaction. Mechanically, she's just a nerfed Mythra after all. And then it hit me. Pyra had sex. But jokes aside, her daughter Glimmer gives us a few new attacks to consider, and with a few ideas to consider, I specifically want to go with Flare Aria as a shield plus B attack. Pyra's specials are too themed to get away with only changing one of them, and this would provide a passive property that Mythra, or any opponents, can also make use of. To start with, Flare Aria would have a 1 to 2 second animation, mandating the need for space and preventing you from just spamming it constantly. On successful activation, it would leave a decently sized pillar for around 5 to 10 seconds, giving attack up to everyone inside, friend or foe. The drawbacks would be high enough that it's a situational tool at best, and a reckless one at worst, but it would also make Pyra's stage control even stronger while doubling as a way for Mythra to deal more damage, or potentially even land KOs. Also, side note, Mythra also had sex, we just haven't seen her kid yet. With all the characters we can group together out of the way, we can now touch on all the characters that we can't. These will all be first-party, lone representatives of select series in the game, starting with Yoshi. One of Yoshi's trademark abilities is being able to eat objects and store them as eggs he can throw. This is already represented somewhat with his neutral and up special, but I want to take this a step further. Now, Yoshi will be able to use his neutral special on projectiles, and store up to 3 smaller eggs for later. If you use up special while storing eggs, all stored eggs will automatically be thrown alongside it. While the main egg is still the one you'll want to hit, these smaller eggs will scatter around it, giving your accuracy more margin for error. Captain Falcon. Listen, if you watched my Taboo video, then you already know where this is going. The People's Elbow. Return it to us. I have a fun idea for Ice Climbers that I actually theorized in the hype cycle for Smash 4. The intentional weakness of the character is having to babysit Nana and keep your opponent from wailing on her too hard. What if you could shield plus B to switch which climber you control? This would give you a unique ability to save Nana in situations where you wouldn't be able to otherwise, or you could even land a sneaky reversal with it. There would need to be some balance to it, like high startup, but I think it could be a lot of fun, especially if the swap has some kind of drawback or restriction that can help incentivize your opponent to bait you into swapping. One of the things Ultimate, and Smash 4 to a lesser extent, did was give a lot of characters counters or reflectors, and for the utility of it, that's fine and all, but you eventually reach a point where they stop being special. This is how I feel especially about Mr. Game & Watch's Oil Panic. What was once a super unique move with specific use cases is now just another reflector, granted with special properties, but it's so much less interesting now if I'm being honest. Throughout this list, I've been trying to get rid of counters and reflectors where I can find a good reason to, and this is just the one where I don't have anything else to say about the change itself. Game & Watch is very strong competitively, and this change isn't going to suddenly make him low tier or anything. With Walio's dash attack now being Shoulder Bash, it's hard to really pick changes for him. His only games in the modern day are the WarioWare games, and while I'm sure you could find moveset inspirations if you looked hard enough, none of them feel like they have any connection to Wario. While I have a rework idea for Waft turning it into more of a utility move, the idea falls flat with how strong recoveries are these days, resulting in the change being more of a nerf than anything else. Instead, we're just going to take another change from Project M and give him the Wario Land Shake It down smash. For Olimar, I'm fixing the greatest oversight in all of Ultimate, and I'm turning Alf into an Echo. It always felt so weird to me that he remained an alt in a game where some Echoes are glorified alts already, especially considering Alf seems to have been planned as a clone character back in Smash 4, according to this article by Source Gaming. An easy differentiation would be to revert Olimar to pulling Pikmin in random order like Brawl, but there's plenty of other things you can do piggybacking off of Pikmin 4. You could give them each a 6th Pikmin type of Rock for Alf, as those debuted in his game, and Ice or Glow as they debuted in Pikmin 4 for Olimar. You could also tweak some numbers such as the amount of Pikmin one can hold, and the core strengths of the Pikmin the other holds. And again, they don't even need differences. Daisy and Richter don't have any distinct changes to their counterpart, so why would this apply to Alf? Either way, I hope we can see him get a promotion come the next Smash entry. There's even enough material to turn them into semi-clones like Villager and Isabelle, and following the success of Pikmin 4, the series is definitely big enough to justify it. Did you know that prior to being added into Smash, Rob was made playable in Mario Kart DS? Project M actually made an entire outfit based on this, and I want to port that over into Ultimate as well. It's a really cool nod, and the only real change you can give him aside from referencing another peripheral like the Virtual Boy or Inzap. And don't worry, the gyro won't get replaced by the item box this time. Now we just wait for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Pack to add him in as a returning character. Huh, that's weird. Where is he? For Wii Fit, I just have a fun novelty idea. When you use the header attack, I want the soccer ball to stay out longer and be interactable, like the soccer ball item. There's no rhyme or reason for this, it's mostly just a silly idea for a character I'm not going to have much to say on otherwise. Fun fact, Little Mac has a different KO punch animation in Smash 4 than he does in Ultimate, and the differing animations affect how you combo into it. In Smash 4, he'd lunge forward horizontally, while in Ultimate, it's a jumping uppercut that hits more vertically. Now I know buffing KO punch isn't the thing that Mac needs to be viable, but he really needs an entire redesign for that. So instead, let's give him the choice between using both KO punch variants based on input. The move itself is situational enough that the change wouldn't make too much of a difference overall, but it would help him convert off of hits now that he can change how he follows up. Honestly, we're now past the point of being able to comfortably suggest changes. The characters are either so niche that there's nothing to really base source material on, so perfect that any suggested changes serve to potentially ruin their entire kit, or so weird that it's easier to give them a full redesign. So instead of trying to BS a changed Duck Hunt, I'm just gonna play around with alternate costumes, specifically the 4th one, since it's not actually based on anything. And instead of trying to arbitrarily pick some random breed to base it on, I'll just keep things simple and make it a Husky. Because I like Huskies. Next, we have Inkling. And thankfully, as an Inkling player, I have something here that I really want to talk about. I want the Splat Bomb explosion to always hit in the same direction. I couldn't tell you exactly how it works right now, but the bomb is inconsistent with the direction it sends. Ideally, it would send out every time, but even if we want it to be a quirky tool that sends inward, making it do so consistently would give the Inkling player the readiness to play off of it and land a follow-up, potentially sealing the stock in the process. To close out this section, we have Min Min, and I hope you don't want me to talk a lot, because I'm not gonna. Her up smash reflects. Literally why? That feels like a contender for the most DLC thing in the game. Her up smash no longer reflects. Clap. And finally, we have the third parties. Most of these are super faithful to their games of origin to the point that it's hard to pitch any change for them, but these first two have some glaring oversights. For Snake, I ask you a simple question. Why does he only have one taunt? No, really, why? I get that the box is iconic, but surely there's some cute things they can pull from to fill out the other 2 slots. Even Project M struggled to fix this well, but at least they tried. For Sonic, there's a lot you can do here. I'm going with the boost mechanic. Original choice, I know, but hear me out, because my take on it's pretty unique, I think. I want it to function as a hit cancel or command dash, similar to Project M Lucario's take on Double Team, or even a Guilty Gear Roman cancel. There would need to be some limitation on it to keep it from being too spammable, but this gives them a unique way to chain aggression together. While I don't have a good way to make Sonic less campy in a singular change, this at least gives players more aggressive things they can do. Remember, a lot of why Sonic is campy is because he has no reliable way to be aggressive. Next is Mega Man, and from here on, good changes are once again hard to come by. I looked through every Mega Man ability I could find from the mainline games, and the few that I found intriguing didn't seem to be worth swapping out other abilities for. So instead, I'm just gonna give Crash Bomb with a small tweak. If you smash and put the move, it functions normally, but the tilt version now fires a weaker shot that explodes on contact. Kinda like Samus's missiles. I don't want this new version to overshadow the original, but it does give you a projectile now with a bit more immediate reward to use in neutral. Pac-Man is another Mii change, so just bear with me. Why? What did they do to my baby boy? Much better. Okay, so for the audio onlys, one of Pac-Man's changes going into Ultimate was a change to his up tilt. Pac-Man was one of my most played characters in Smash 4, and it is not an exaggeration to say that this change is one of the main reasons I stopped playing him. Up tilt was a big part of my repertoire when playing as the character, and I find it to be quite literally unusable now. There's niche use cases where it's cute, but I just miss the original and would do some unsavory things to get it back. For Ryu and Ken, I was originally gonna go with replacing Focus Attack with Drive Impact, Street Fighter VI's premier mechanic. This change would come alongside the Drive Meter and all of its mechanics such as Drive Rush and the Burnout system. But with how much of a change that would be, it might be better off with its own video later down the line, especially considering I haven't actually played Street Fighter VI yet. So let me know if that's something you'd like to see. For now, I'll go with giving Ryu his Hashogeki special as a command move. In Street Fighter VI, the input on it is quarter circle back plus punch, but because that overlaps with the Tatsu input, let's tweak it a bit to be half circle back as another secret input of sorts alongside the red fireball map exclusively with half circle forward. I'd specifically pitch this to be the fierce version of the attack as well, with set knockback and guaranteeing a tech chase, provided the low knockback doesn't hit them off stage instead. As for Ken, I'm following suit and giving him the Dragon Lash kick as a back special. While I've tried hard not to give characters back specials, the floodgates have been opened, and there's not a better place to insert this move without replacing a more iconic move. Also, it's back special in Street Fighter VI modern controls, so it's fitting in that respect as well. With that in mind, I guess Hashogeki could also be a back special for Ryu. I didn't want to re-record the script after I had this thought, so sorry for the awkward placement here instead. Back to Ken. Quickly tap the button and gain a burst option to chip at and pressure foes, however, with minimal frame advantage and no true confirms off of it. Hold the button, however, and you'll instead perform a much stronger version, with slightly higher startup, flame effects, and an untechable ground bounce, perfect for the combos the light version tells you not to worry about. You can also perform either of these with half circle back plus attack for more damage, but be careful not to accidentally perform a Tatsu with quarter circle back, or the crescent kick with forward down instead. Also, if there's no stage below Ken at the time of the kick, the attack would have spike properties. Not so much that you'll KO at low to mid percents, but definitely a stylish way to close out stocks as you get to higher percent thresholds. And if you're worried I've made Ken and Ryu too different from each other, then quiet. I know the game classifies them as echoes, but they're echoes in name only. They're as distinct as certain semi-clones, arguably more so. They only have the echo classification because they were clone characters back in Street Fighter 2.
In his original game, Ken could be considered Ryu's Echo Fighter. Ken has been distinguished from Ryu over the years, but the Ken you'll see this time is based on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
For Cloud, I simply ask for more visual disparity between his outfits. It's hard to change them too much since the colors are mostly based on ranks within Soldier, but more vibrant colors would go a long way. As part of this singular change, I propose recoloring the brown alt as it's currently not based on anything, and changing it to the black color scheme of First Class Soldier and Crisis Core. The first sleeveless alt will be recolored to match the red outfit OG FF7 Cloud has, as it's near indistinguishable from the default Advent Children outfit in its current state. I'm hoping you'll overlook small color tweaks to multiple outfits as technically being more than one change, but here's an alternate idea if you can't. Replace either outfit I recolored with Sky Solar, Cloud's design within Kingdom Hearts, and if you want to change both, Sky Solar 3 is a Dissidia recolor of the same design, but now sporting a black and white color palette. For Bayo, my change is simple and reasonable. Please give us the option to turn off Naive Angel Mode. Okay. Fine. We won't do that. Instead, all I can think of is to give her an option for the Bayonetta 3 design. This would slot in nicely next to the outfit she already has, representing her first 2 games, and her core moveset is too important to change anyway. Jumping to Smash Ultimate, we have the Belmonts, and following the general Echo philosophy I've had so far, I just want a little more than colored flames to differentiate them. So I'm going to give them each one change. Simon will get the daggers from the first Castlevania game in place of the axe. These daggers can be fired up to 3 at a time by pressing the B button additional times. There's no real rhyme or reason for this, it's just another sub-weapon from the original game that you could toss in somewhere else. In contrast, Richter's Holy Water will remain the same, but now function as it does in Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night, slowly crawling across the ground a short distance after detonating. Now we move on to Joker, and I have some thoughts. I'm not gonna claim to be a big Persona fan or anything, I only got around to playing non-5 games this year, but I had played 5 prior to Joker's reveal and loved it. This is actually one of the only reveals I've gotten noticeably enthusiastic for it, and yet I'm not fond of his gameplay design at all. In fact, I loathe it. I can get behind wanting to do something different from how Persona 4 Arena handled the Personas in a fighting game, but it feels so disrespectful for Arsene to be relegated to a comeback mechanic instead. Arsene isn't just a companion or an ability Joker has access to. He's an extension of Joker himself, hence the title of Persona. I could totally be in the minority here, but that's how I've always felt, going from wanting to main the character following his announcement to being his #1 hater post-release. And while I'd love to pitch a way to amend this, doing so in a single change is a tall ask. I guess the best I could do is ask for an adjustment of the timer. So here's my pitch. The Rebel Gauge charges and drains at twice the speed. This means you'll get him twice as fast, but you won't be able to play around him for as long. While the just camp him philosophy has proven correct following the release of Kazuya and the post-lockdown meta, being told to run away from one of the highest mobility characters in the game for 15 seconds at a time is a crazy ask for most of the cast. I don't think this is that unreasonable at all. Ran over. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Despite being a much more controversial character, I actually have a lot less to say about Hero. While I was originally going to pitch something simple like adding symbols to the menu, there's a much bigger elephant in the room that needs to be addressed, and that's crit smashes. Crit smashes are actually a super fun concept, but it really should have been a gameplay toggle rather than a mechanic exclusive to one character. Or if Hero has to have crit smashes, then at least balance the 1 in 8 chance to crit with a 1 in 8 chance to miss, having the knockback and damage of the attack becoming that of the fan item. Sure, attacks in JRPGs can crit, but they can also miss outright. Give the reward of crit a little bit of risk to it as well. Also, if you want symbols on Hero's menu or any other quality of life changes, then you can find mods that already do those things. I don't endorse modding your Switch, because of how south things can go if you do it wrong, but I do endorse downloading mods that add quality of life if your Switch is already modded or if you play on emulator. And then there's Banjo. I'm not really sure what to say about him, having not played a Banjo game before, and with him being largely absent and forgettable from the competitive meta. So with that in mind, forgive me when I say that the only change I can think of here is to give him a way to replenish gold feathers under certain conditions. I quite enjoy the idea of Wonder Wing being a limited use move, but I can't help but feel you should at least get a wing back when you take a stock or for living to higher percents. It would at least help give Banjo an identity next to all the BS other DLC characters have, instead of being the middle child no one talks about. Originally, I was going to redesign Talia's Go mode to be more like King of Fighters 15's Max mode, but the more I tried to play with it, the more I realized I had no way to make it anything but a straight downgrade. In defeat, I scrolled Talia's move list within SNK games for something, anything, to reignite my morale, and in my time of need, I found it. The Fire Kick. An obscure move present only in Real Bout Fatal Fury, King of Fighters 98, and King of Fighters Maximum Impact, and while initially I was going to replace down tilt with this, I see no need. If Kazuya can have 8 tilts, at least one of which can't even be used outside of 1v1s, Talia can have a 4th tilt, or a second dash attack, or whatever a crouch attack is. So Fire Kick is now uniquely filling one of those slots, replacing nothing in return. This 2-hit attack starts with a leg slide, similar to the Belmonts. Upon pressing the button again, Talia transitions from the slide into a high kick, functioning as a launcher. Additionally, as a tilt, either hit can be cancelled into any of his specials. Cancel it into Rising Tackle for more damage, Crack Shoot to get away from a shield you just poked, or into either super special as a flashy KO option. Even if you're against giving Talia an extra button, this wouldn't strictly be a downgrade if it had to replace his down tilt due to the extra utility it grants. You just lose out on the iconic move that is his current down tilt. Steve is an interesting case. I can think up 5 to 10 ways to slap him on the wrist in the snap of a finger, and none of them would be enough. He's just so overtuned in so many ways that it's hard to pick only one change. Notable examples include giving all tools shared durability, reducing the amount of resources he respawns with, or making it so high knockback moves will send foes through blocks, removing his ability specifically to bounce off of them himself and increase survivability. The actual change I'm going with, however, is making it take 2 to 3 times as long to mine resources. This doesn't take away any strengths of the character or alter his game plan, but by taking more time to mine resources, you're limiting the amount of resources you can farm in a given amount of time, and thus limiting the amount of resources Steve has to fight with overall. Instead of making something like Minecart cost extra iron, you instead limit Steve's ability to generate iron. This effectively hits him in the same way, but with the added benefit of extending beyond singular moves. It also makes the resource management side of his game plan more of a thing, now that you can't just spam iron moves or build walls without a second thought. Also, let's be honest, the characters that can't contest Steve mining behind a wall aren't going to have a much better time fighting the character. This change is arguably not enough, but I can't do much better with a singular change. And to any Steve mains, I love you. I really do. No matter what happens within the game, whether Steve stays legal or gets banned, I want you to keep playing this game. And I want you to keep being a part of this community. You don't deserve any of the hate you get. That said, I still believe your character is ridiculously broken. Sephiroth gets a fun change. Shadow Flare is an interesting move, where it adds small orbs of darkness around someone that detonate on a timer. However, there's not much practical reason to add more orbs to someone beyond resetting the timer. What if you could manually detonate the timer by hitting someone with Shadow Flare that already has 5 orbs on them? This would make the threat of Shadow Flare suddenly more threatening the closer you get to 5 orbs, but also adds some depth and mind games to it, on top of what's normally there. Do you want to go for the immediate detonation dealing a combo for guaranteed damage and advantage state, or do you want to gamble on scaling them into getting hit by the orbs normally, allowing for a guaranteed punish? Hard to say how practical this change would actually be, but the idea is really fun to think about. Kazuya's in a similar spot to Steve of being overtuned, but in this case, I don't think the issue is what you'd think it is. Initially, I wanted to make Electric Wind Godfist a 1-frame input, but due to Ultimate's buffer system, it's impossible to be 100% consistent even on a 2-frame input, so that change doesn't feel fair. Conversely, removing iframes from the move just makes it less spammable and neutral. It doesn't actually change what I believe to be the problem with Kazuya, being his damage output. Instead, I just want to cut his damage in half across the board. I don't mind him having an explosive combo game, consistent 0 to deaths, or anything else. I just want him to have to work for it. And while this current combo game isn't wobbling or Steve jabs, I feel like it could stand to require a little more execution at least. And last but not least, Sora. What changes can we give him? He's the last character, we have to send him out on a high note. It's Roxas. We're giving him a Roxas outfit. This change is just for me, and I will wholeheartedly admit to that. But I love Roxas, and would play the character solely if he had a Roxas alt. Even if it was a crummy, no effort recolor. I don't care. I just want my boy represented. I'd personally pick to replace the Timeless River alt. It's a cute reference, but it's the most forgettable as well. That said, I'd also happily replace either or both of the Dream Drop outfits. Swapping those make the main outfits that of Kingdom Hearts 1, 2, and 3, along with Sora's Doppelganger. And Roxas has 2 different outfits that you could justifiably add either of or both into whatever slot you want, being his Twilight Town outfit at the start of Kingdom Hearts 2, and his Organization outfit in 358 Days Over 2. So that's my list. When I sat down to do this, I didn't realize how long the script was going to be by the end of it. What would you have done instead for any of these characters? Let me know. I'm super willing and happy to chat about any of your ideas or what I might have forgotten about on my own. Because I haven't played a lot of these games, it's hard to have first-hand knowledge or ideas for them, but I did my best. Crossover games like Smash are responsible for getting me into a lot of my favorite things, so anything in the game I plan to play once or twice at some point, and maybe I'll redo this video with more of a connection to certain IPs in a year yet to come. Special thanks to Neon, Metron, Vega, Zeta, Fred Zero, Snowbuddy, and Shinikiba for helping me come up with a lot of these ideas. The end result would have been so much worse without y'all. And if I can throw one more change at the end of this video, I'd like to upgrade Taboo from a spirit into a playable fighter. Go watch my video here about how that could work. I'm still shocked at how well it was received, and I can only hope for this and future videos to do half as good. Alternatively, here's a video of some friends and me playing SCP Secret Laboratory. And beyond that, I stream every Thursday. I just finished Hi-Fi Rush, and depending on when this video uploads, I'm either about to start playing Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, or I just did. Other than that, look forward to my end of year video, where I'll rank all the games I played this year. Also, subscribe and follow my Twitter to be aware of any future streams and videos, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Ciao!